words of our Divine Mother from the book The Mother, Question and Answers of 1954, Volume 6, page 393, date 10th November 1954. There is a discussion or a talk which is based upon Sri Aurobindo's Basis of Yoga, Chapter 2, Faith, Aspiration and Surrender. During this talk, one child is coming up to the mother and says, "What does this exactly mean, sweet mother? In yoga, it is out of the inner victory that there comes the outer conquest." For this, our Divine Mother says, yes. First, you must attain the true consciousness, be in contact with the Divine, and let Him govern your action, and then you can act upon outer circumstances, even action, and overcome outer difficulties. Let me repeat this for you. First, you must attain the true consciousness, be in contact with the Divine, and let Him govern all your actions, and then you can act upon outer circumstances, even actions, and overcome outer difficulties, says our Divine Mother. You must have the inner experience first before hoping to be something external. In fact, everything is founded upon an awareness of the Divine consciousness, and unless this is done, all the rest is uncertain. Nothing can be permanently established. It is only after one has become conscious then one can follow one's paths rapidly without fear. Otherwise, one always risks making mistakes, going on a false track. Then the child says, "Sweet mother, what does psychic poise means?" For this, our Divine Mother says, psychic poise means the poise of the being which comes from the fact that the psychic which governs the movements of the being is the master of all the movements of the consciousness. The psychic is always well poised. So, when it is active and governs the being, it is inevitably bringing a balance within you. This child says, "Sweet mother, last time we read, it does not matter what defects you may have in your nature. The one thing that matters is you're keeping yourself open to the divine force." Sweet mother, if one has defects, how can one open to the force? For this, our Divine Mother says, "I think everyone has defects. So if it were necessary not to have any defects in order to be open, nobody could be open. One always has defects to begin with. One is not made of a single piece. This is the main reason. There are many different parts in the being which sometimes are quite independent of one another and take hold of the consciousness almost in turn and sometimes even in an altogether regular order. So when part of the being has goodwill and already a kind of perception of what the divine force is, you see, this opens the being and puts it in contact with this force. But it is not always there. There are other parts which come to the front, which have the defects, bad habits, and which can veil the consciousness completely. But if one keeps the memory of the part which was open, one can keep the opening all the same, though outwardly the part that is active is not particularly interested and not even able to understand, but the other part can continue to be open and receive the force. Then the child says, "Sweet mother, can one have faith through aspiration?" For this, our Divine Mother says, what? Faith through aspiration? I think so, because it is rare to have it spontaneously, to be born with it. Very few people have this good luck to have a spontaneous faith, but if one is very sincere in one's aspiration, one gets it. Aspiration can bring everything, provided it is sincere and constant. One always has a tiny element of faith within oneself, whether it be faith in what one's parents have said or in the books one has studied. After all our education is based upon a faith of this kind. Those who have educated, they have told you certain things. You had no means of checking because you were too young and you had no experience. But you have the faith in what they told you and you go forward on that faith. So everyone has a tiny bit of faith, and to increase it, one can always use one's own aspiration. The child says, "Sweet mother, in your symbol, the 12 petals signify 12 inner planes, don't they?" For that, the Divine Mother says it does signifies. It signifies anything one wants to. You see, 12, that's a number of Aditi, of Mahashakti. So it applies to everything. All her action has 12 aspects. There are also her 12 virtues, her 12 powers, her 12 aspects, and then her 12 planes of manifestation, and many other things that are 12. And the symbol, the number 12, is in itself a symbol. It is the symbol of manifestation, double perfection, and in essence and in manifestation in the creation. The child again puts a question, "What are the 12 aspects, sweet mother?" For that, our Divine Mother says, my child, I have described this somewhere, but I don't remember now. But for it is always a choice, you see, according to what one wants to say. One can choose these 12 aspects or 12 others or give them different names. The same aspect can be named in different ways. This doesn't have the fixity of a mental theory. According to the angle from which one sees the creation, one day I may describe 12 aspects to you, and the another day, because I'm shifting my concentration, my center of concentration or observation, I may describe 12 others. They may be equally true. To Vishwanath, is this the wind that's producing the storm? For that, Vishwanath smiles and our Divine Mother says, it's very good for a dramatic stage effect. The traitor is approaching in the night. Yes, we are waiting for some terrible deed. Then the child says, "Sweet mother, when does the psychic being lose its poise?" For that, the Divine Mother says, "Never." "Sweet mother, what does sincerity exactly mean?" For that, our Divine Mother says, there are several degrees of sincerity. The most elementary degree is not to say one thing and think another, claim one thing and want another. For example, what happens quite often to say, I want to make progress, I want to get rid of my defects, and at the same time to cherish one's defects in the consciousness and take great care to hide them so that nobody intervenes and sends them off. This indeed is a very common phenomenon. This is already the second degree. The first degree you see is when someone claims, for example, to have a great aspiration, wants to have a spiritual life, and at the same time does completely shameless things which are contradictory to the spiritual life. This is indeed a degree of sincerity, rather a degree of insincerity, which is most obvious. But there is a second degree which I have described to you, which is like this. There's one part of the being which has an aspiration and says, even thinks and feels that it get rid of all the defects, imperfections. And the same time, other parts that hide these defects very carefully so long as not to be compelled to expose them. And this is quite often. And finally, if we go far enough, if we push the description enough, so long as there is a part of the being which contradicts the central aspiration for the divine, one is not perfectly sincere. That is to say, a perfect sincerity is something extremely very rare, and very frequently we see when there are things in our own nature which one does not like, and one takes the greatest care to hide themselves, to find favorable explanations. And you have noticed this, when things move like this, you can't see them clearly. Where the defect is seated, there's a kind of vibration which does this, and this is automatic. When there's a perfect sincerity that is at the center of the being, there is the consciousness of the divine presence, the consciousness of the divine will, and the entire being is luminous, clear, and transparent, expresses this in all the details. This is called true sincerity. When at any moment, whatever happens, the being gives itself to the divine, wants only the divine will, no matter what is going on in the being at any moment, whatever, the whole being is perfect unanimity, can say to the divine and feels for the divine, let thy will be done. When it is spontaneous, total, integral, that means you are sincere. But until this is established, it's a mixed sincerity, more or less mixed, and to the point where one is not sincere at all. These are the divine words of our Divine Mother.